Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Heinrich, and I am part of the sales team here at Boyer. We're so glad that you could join us for Boyer's Spring Client Events. If you've already been on a session or two, welcome back. This session is going to cover an overview of the MC4N with Lee. All right, if this is your first time joining us, or if you want a reminder, here's a quick look at this week's agenda. If you missed a session, you can request a recording by emailing kerickson@boyerassociates.com. Also, just a quick reminder that you can put any questions that you might have in the Q&A box. So don't put it in the chat, make sure you put it in the Q&A box. We will answer a few questions at the end of the session if we have time, or we'll follow up with you after the event. You can also watch sessions that you've missed, or if you'd like to just rewatch them, from the same event registration page. All right, so you are all clients, so we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about Boyer, but we did want to give you a quick look at what we offer. We are a full service ERP, CRM, and Power Platform solutions provider, and we do a lot of work in the nonprofit sector specifically. I also wanted to highlight in the bottom right corner our managed support. All right, so we have revamped the way that we do support here at Boyer. We have tiered services and support options for every need, from basic support to proactive weekly meetings. If you want more info, please be sure to attend those sessions, or you can email Dave at dkuntz@boyerassociates.com. All right, so we have a lot of great info to cover. Let's dive into this session with Lee Woodcock.
Thank you, Jen. So as Jen mentioned, we will be talking about Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. This is the only slide I have, so you won't get inundated with slides today. We'll actually jump in and see a couple of the apps, not everything, but give you kind of an overview. I have been having some connection issues, so I'm going to stop my webcam, but thanks for joining. So what is Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit? Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit, about 7 or 8 years ago, Microsoft went out to the nonprofit world and said, they wanted to start understanding what is the underlying data model that need to be created for nonprofits to provide kind of the whole life cycle of business applications, from a constituent coming in until making a donation or a pledge or managing your programs, and really understand how can we do this across the existing products that we have. So historically, it's been difficult to create kind of a CRM for nonprofits. They're expensive. The nonprofit needs are very specific. So they started with that bottom row that you see there called the Nonprofit Common Data Model. This was really saying we need to build a structure, and they worked with a lot of nonprofits to come up with what is the back end of the database that we need to have so that we can track our constituents, track our donations, pledges, programs, kind of that whole scale. What do nonprofits need? From there, they took in with the technologies that already exist, put those on top of it. So that Nonprofit Common Data Model, now let's take Dataverse and Dynamics 365, Azure, Power Apps, all of these enterprise level applications, and put those on top, and then take those use cases from nonprofits and start to focus them. So you'll notice across the top, we have know your donors and supporters. How can we do that from a business applications perspective? And then how do we deliver effective programming and then accelerate our mission outcomes? So the line you see here in the middle, these are actually the applications or different apps out there that Microsoft has created and made specific for the nonprofit industry. I won't talk about all of them, but a couple, the first one they started out with was called Fundraising Engagement. So this is donations and pledges, recurring gifts, as well as whole-scale event management. So being able to manage your events. This sits on the Dynamics Sales app and has some hooks into Azure App Services. So if you think about somebody pledges that they're going to give monthly $100 to your program. Well, we don't want to create donations for 100 years. Instead, you can set up a timing. So we create a gift and we have a general idea of how many are out there. LinkedIn Sales Navigator connects right into that dynamic sales app as well, so you can get up-to-date information about your constituents. And then we have constituent marketing journeys using Dynamics Marketing. So interacting with our constituents at the right time, through the right channel, with the right message, using Microsoft's Dynamics Marketing, and then allowing you to understand who the donors are, your volunteers are, and using that to actually send out the marketing emails. So instead of inundating with everybody with everything of all your messaging, this allows you to get a little more targeted, or a lot more targeted for that matter. To the right of that, we have a couple things built within the Power Platform. So in Power Apps, volunteer management, this is internally us tracking our volunteers, not only who they are, what their skills are, maybe training that they need to do, but then also those volunteer opportunities. So setting it up and saying, I need 10 volunteers with these skills at this day and time. And then, so maybe it's Friday morning, I need 10 with these skills. And then Friday afternoon at the same location doing a similar thing, I need 5 more. So allowing you to interact with those volunteers and then bring them through a process of getting them upskilled to what you need, or at least identifying their skills. And maybe they need to have CPR training. So identifying that, storing it in your database for the next time that they might volunteer. Just past that, in volunteer engagement, this actually turns it around. Instead of us internally managing our volunteers, this lets volunteers see those volunteer opportunities and raise their hand to say, hey, I want to support your mission and I want to help in this volunteer opportunity. Next Friday in the morning, I want to be one of those 10, and bring them through a process that's easy for them to identify if they have the right skills. And those two things are going to be interacting. And because all of this sits on that nonprofit common data model, again, back to your constituent marketing journeys, we're not only understanding, hey, who is Lee from a fundraising engagement and a donor perspective and an event perspective, but who is Lee from a volunteer perspective? Now, how do we interact with Lee? And we'll see a little high level understanding of that later. There's a couple more things in here I'm not going to touch too much on, but Volunteer Center gives the ability for your volunteers, if they need, introductory training or something, allows you to set up some pages for them to go to and maybe watch videos or sign sheets from terms and conditions perspective, that kind of thing. And then last, down here at the end, you'll see Power BI as part of this as well. So the program impact dashboard, as long as you're putting all your data into this common data model, Microsoft, and we'll just get a glimpse of it at the end here, but they've created a dashboard in Power BI just to give you, a start look at, or a look at what you could possibly do within Power BI. And if you're not familiar with Power BI, this is going to let you bring in not only anything from this nonprofit common data model, but if you have financial edge or survey data or something else from a program perspective, you can tie all that together with your constituent information and really start to build out your analytics and make actionable decisions. This is, just like these apps generally are being updated, like Power Apps is constantly changing and being enhanced from Microsoft. In addition to that, they're doing the same thing from a nonprofit perspective. So you kind of get not only the enhancements from a application perspective, when Azure gets better or Power Apps gets better, Dynamics Marketing gets better, but then also there's an entire team within Microsoft that's enhancing the specific apps. So this is really a focus from a Microsoft perspective, a lot of investment going into this. And as you can imagine, with the components of AI coming out right now, some of the stuff I just saw was around, what's the probability of somebody donating? You can imagine that with ChatGPT someday, some of those Dynamics Marketing messages might be written from an AI perspective. So this is going to continue to grow, and it's a huge team within Microsoft that's focused on this. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of kind of what we're talking about when we talk about Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. A lot of people are like, hey, it's this fundraising engagement app. It's actually this entire ecosystem across a lot of different technologies in Microsoft. And now we'll go ahead and jump in and take a look at a couple. So first you'll notice up here we have fundraising and engagement. So that was the first one on the left you saw. Like I mentioned, this is kind of this was one of the first that Microsoft put out there, continuing to enhance it regularly, but it is managing kind of that core donor constituent within Dynamics 365, which is a CRM. So you get a lot of that CRM functionality or all that CRM functionality, but now with a donor lens on it. What we're looking at here is a dashboard. And the dashboard is really your one-stop shop. With a quality dashboard, we don't really have to go and historically it was navigating the system. We don't have to do much of that if we set our dashboards up. This entire system is role-based as well. So I'm logged in as Alexia over here. If I was logged in as somebody else, my dashboard might look different. You'll notice I, as Alexia, have opportunity managers or major gift. I'm managing major gift donor fundraisers. There we go. So this is my team, and then I have some of my own as well. So if Greg logged in, though, Greg may only see his major gifts and not Natasha's because Natasha isn't part of his team. Generally speaking, dashboards are made up of lists like you see over here on the left and pretty pictures. All of this information is up to date when we log into the system. So it's live information, gone are the days of waiting till Friday to figure out, what's that Excel spreadsheet that gets passed around. These dashboards I log in, actionable information that I'm getting. Here we have gifts received over $5,000. I mentioned these opportunities. Here's another way to look at those gifts received over $5,000. What month did they get booked? And then open opportunities. From a dashboard perspective, we can send these out, like I said, role-based, so we can give Alexia's team a specific dashboard, but then we can also allow Alexia to do a save as. So she could take this dashboard and save as and move these charts around if she wanted to, or even remove some and add some different ones. As I mentioned, this is all actionable and this is all live data, so we can actually dive in. What I've done now is pulled up that gifts over $5,000. And you'll notice that now the records that make up my gifts received are on the right. And as I look at this Tanzania Health Center one, it's actually filtered that down to those two. And then I can drill in from here. So I want to see that specific Tanzania Health Center, gifts received over $5,000. Who are the donors that make that up? And here we're seeing that Gabriella and Kelly make that up. And so as you can imagine, I can dig deeper and deeper into my data to drive me through what I need to be working on. In addition to that, I can't do it here just because I don't have the privileges within the system, but you can do an export to Excel and you can have it create a live connection between Dynamics and that Excel spreadsheet. So if you have people that love pivot charts and pivot tables, I could get to a regularly used filter like this, export it to Excel on a different tab, build out pivot charts, pivot tables. Every time I open that Excel spreadsheet up, it's going to take my credentials, it's going to reach into the system, and it's going to update that information. A lot of the times what we see this as is a bridge between using, you have heavy Excel users, especially in the nonprofit world, and then you want to get them in and start using these dashboards so they're in their CRM and getting that live information. So it's a good transition to that, or even to Power BI, because with dashboards, we can take that Power BI, like that program impact dashboard we're going to see later, and we can actually embed it right into the system. So give the information, even if it's touching other information from other systems, and present it right to them in their CRM. From here, we'll jump in and look at Gabriella, our constituent. As I mentioned with the dashboards, depending on who logs in, that dashboard might look different. That's the same throughout the entire system. Based off your role when you log in, it's going to present the information in a way that makes sense to your role. So Alexia is a major donor manager, so she's getting donation information. Gabriella may also be a volunteer, and if a volunteer manager logged into the system, she might not see the recurring gifts or doesn't care about whatever household relationship or what company Gabrielle is part of. Probably bad examples, but hopefully you get it. You can also remove and add any information you need on here. If you don't track suffix, you can remove that. If you track something else, you can pull that in and add whatever tracking that you might need. Basic navigation within this. So we have our contact information, just high level over here on the left. You'll also notice we have a membership. So it tracks our membership and gives us a grace period. If, maybe Gabriella's membership, it's done August 18, 2022, you'll notice it's showing as red because it's already expired. The grace period must be really long because we could have it say, hey, in December of 2022, if she hasn't paid her membership fee, automatically remove it. It has the ability to then say, hey, you're no longer a annual supporting member. And then we have giving levels that we can set up. So from the perspective of, depending on the transactions that are coming into the system, move Gabriella through our different giving levels without us having to manually track that. Basic contact information and any of our social media accounts. I'll come back to this middle part in a second. Over here on the right, we have our supporting objectives. So when we were talking about that constituent marketing and those marketing journeys, this is where we start to build some of that information to say, what does Gabriella care about? What do we actually want to interact with Gabriella from a communications or a marketing perspective? We don't want to send her every email that goes out to everybody. She cares about maternal health. Maybe this is because these are the programs she's giving to, and so we flagged her as that. Or maybe she responded, she clicked on a certain link in an email that showed that she cares about Tanzania. So we're going to start to track some of that information. Or she volunteered for an event that was similar to that. And then we have our core CRM functionality over here on the right. So we have a phone call. She gave a major gift. We have appointments, and this entire system also connects to Outlook and Teams. So you could have your emails come directly into the system as we're working with Gabriella Morales. Now to the middle part, this top piece here is to track major gifts. So this is showing that we have, it's in solicitation. This one's actually closed and showing that. And then we have these different cards that give kind of a snapshot into Gabriella's giving, because this is a fundraising system. We're looking at Gabriella as a donor. We have a few different tiles, and you can personalize these to some extent for what makes sense. If you don't have memberships as part of your organization, then we don't add that tile. We might add a different tile that's available. But you'll notice we have a last gift amount, recurring gift, obviously very important, lifetime giving, and then household details further down. So here's Gabriella's direct transactions, but then we also have the household information below that. And then if Blaine had been contributing as well, that would show up right here when we look at Blaine. Within this system, anytime you can't get everything on a single screen, then we start to put things across the top. So here, now this is maybe not something we need to look at all the time, so we have details, and you can have any number of these little links, and then obviously a lot more. Part of implementation when you work with a partner like Boyer is paring a lot of this stuff down to what makes sense for you. This is just what Microsoft turns on out of the box. So there's a lot more in fundraising engagement. I mentioned there's a whole event component to this as well, tracking gifts, tracking payment schedules for pledges or recurring gifts. But let's jump in and look at dynamics marketing briefly. So we talked about those constituent journeys. So this is one of those journeys right there. There's really a few components to a constituent journey. When do I enter the journey? This is the journey in the middle here. So what our segment is, we have volunteers attended an opportunity today. So if somebody was in volunteer management as one of our volunteers and they attended that, if they showed up to their volunteer and we saw that in the system, then they're going to get added to this journey, unless they're a major donor with a donation of over $2,500, then we won't add them. So pretty powerful to be able to add segments, but then remove certain groups based off other segments. So we have that, and then we have exit criteria. So maybe this is a volunteer welcome journey. Maybe if they do a certain thing, maybe they volunteer again, we don't want to continue to email them. So we can decide when to remove them as well. And that's not just based off of time or day or whatever. We can remove them when actions are happening in the system. So what this one is doing is, hey, volunteer attended, add them to it. We're going to send them a thank you email. And you have a lot of ability to create beautiful emails in the system. So here we're seeing our thank you email. And obviously you can get links and everything, and you can reuse pieces with this assets tab over here. You can add some stuff in. We're then going to wait 15 days. And we're going to send an email that says welcome. And you'll notice, or you may not, it has a couple different links in here. So now we're going to start tracking how are they interacting with our communication. So if they click on either of these links, then we're going to decide to do something differently. We're going to wait, and we're going to say, was an email clicked, or a link clicked, sorry. If it was, we're going to go down this path. If it wasn't, we're actually going to go down this path to the right. So you can start to branch off, and then there are even ways to say, depending on the preferences of our constituent, let's choose that instead of sending a newsletter, if they choose to receive text, let's text them instead. So AI is starting to play a big part of how we actually interact and allow the system to determine what's best for the constituents based off all of the data, not just, you know, one specific thing. We know them as a volunteer, we know them as a donor, and we may even know them as, you know, somebody that's doing something else. Maybe they're an employee as well. So last but not least, and again, just like we said in fundraising engagement, there's a lot here from a marketing perspective that you can do. We'll jump into this program impact dashboard. So if you're putting information into that common data model that we saw, whether it's through fundraising and engagement or an app that you just build on top of that data model or volunteer management, we're going to start to fill in this dashboard and pull that information out. And if you haven't seen Power BI before, it's fairly powerful from the perspective of analytics and interacting. You'll notice when I clicked on economic opportunity, some of these turn light blue because they're not part of it, but then it highlights information that makes sense. So this specific dashboard is saying, what's the impact of our programs? Here we have more of a summary of our programs, who's donated, how many donors, what's the budget. So we can look at a specific section of it from an implementation perspective, and it's going to narrow down our numbers. And again, we can say, what about those that started in January? And so we can really dive even deeper than what we saw in those dashboards previously. And again, this is just out of the box from Microsoft. Here again, we have our different programs, and now we're seeing revenue raised for that specific program over time. So that's a quick glimpse into Microsoft Cloud for Nonprofit. Obviously, there's a lot of functionality that we haven't even touched the tip of within fundraising engagement, and there's volunteer management and lots of different options, and Microsoft is enhancing it on a regular basis. But let's see if there are any questions, Jen.
All right, so it doesn't look like there's any questions at this time. So again, if you do have any questions, feel free to go ahead and enter those in now. We have a couple of minutes. But in the meantime, thank you so much for all of this information, Lee. You did a great job. And I hope that it was informative for everybody that attended. And if you have interest in any of the other sessions that are coming up, please do attend those as well. So going back to the questions, still no questions entered in. So if you do happen to think of your question after the session has ended, feel free to reach out to us and we can certainly answer those for you. But otherwise, looks like we will probably be wrapping up this session. And I hope that everybody has a great day, and thank you for attending.